everyone. In this week's video, we're going to go over the steps I go through to create tulips, daffodils, and hyacinths in 1 gallon pots to then sell in the spring in my flower wagon. And I put the picture right here of what my flower wagon looks like, and you can see tulips and daffodils blooming in that. Hyacinths is new for me this year, so don't know how that'll work out yet. It's 2024 experiment. Okay, so after I've gone through all the steps of how I create the situation where I can sell them, I'm then going to go over an exact breakdown of how much labor or time it took on a per pot basis. I'm not going to go through the cost of the labor because that's depending on what you charge for your labor. I, for instance, don't think it's acceptable to charge anything less than $30 an hour, because if you hire somebody, you have their labor plus any overhead that goes with that, like bookkeeping, payroll, whatever. So for me, a minimum charge would be $30 an hour. For a lot of other people, they do their labor costs at $15 an hour, which here where I live isn't even minimum wage. Our minimum wage is higher than $15 an hour. So I start with a base 30. Now, the other thing I'm going to do is go over the material costs. So you can take the material costs and you can take the amount of labor it all adds up to, even though I'll give it to you in broken down steps. And you can say, okay, for example, if you make $30 an hour, every minute is worth 50 cents because there's 60 minutes in an hour. $30 goes, or 30 goes into 60 twice, so it's 2 minutes for $1 of wages based at $30 an hour. So anyway, we'll go over that later on, but let's just start with where I store my 1 gallon pots over the course of the rest of the year, and then let it all unfold from there. So in my outdoor garden station, I have underneath it, it's pretty much filled with 1 gallon, 2 gallon, I'm assuming those are 1 gallon, but square pots. I bought 500 1 gallon pots for 50 cents each from a rhododendron nursery that was deciding to go out of business just because of a death in the family. So I was able to get 500 1 gallon pots for only 50 cents. That's fantastic. Top of my station, I have some bigger pots. All these ferns that just grow naturally here, they're going to make good compost. But anyway, I've taken 100 pots out from here in the 1 gallon, and I put them into what was my bouquet making station. So let's go check that out. So here we are in what was my bouquet making station, which is now going to be my pot filling station. I've taken 100 of these 1 gallon pots several days ago and put them here to dry, so that you can't write on them when they're wet. Now all I got to do is take a rag and wipe off any dirt and spider webs that are on them. Whatever collects, I have a little dustpan here. I can just periodically sweep that off the end of the table. It goes into my organic debris tote down there, which will end up going into the compost. I write on the pots with a grease pencil because it holds up to all weather. Now you can get grease pencils in many colors. This one's white because clearly white works best on a black pot. If you have white plastic labels, you can write on them with a black grease pencil. I just get them from Staples, and I got a whole box of them quite a few years ago actually. And then I always have a little knife with me because when you peel back the wood, it doesn't always come off properly. In this case, too much came off, but sometimes too little comes off, and then this comes in handy. Here I've got my daffodils, tulips, and hyacinths. The bulbs are all about the same size, which is kind of cool. The daffodils and the tulips came with tags, but personally inside a pot, I find that too hard for people to have to deal with and read. I prefer writing on the pots because it just makes it a much easier flow for anybody pulling up to the flower wagon. So let's get ready to start writing on a pot. So I've got my pot. I've dumped out whatever debris was inside here, which you can see right there, which is why that little dustpan comes in handy. I'm just gonna wipe off the surface of this here. I'm going to start with my hyacinths because they didn't come with tags. Now the hyacinths are called Helmar. So I'm just going to write on that here. That's it. Now, easily clear from my flower wagon what's in that pot. I'm just going to go ahead and write all the tags of, well, all the names in all the pots now. And once that's done, we're going to go get soil up here. And we're going to bring it in here in a garbage can. I've got the garbage can here, but it's empty right now. I have 3 full garbage cans, but they're way too heavy to bring up here. So I will transfer half of the soil from one garbage can into here and bring it up, and then the other one's ready to come up because it's already half empty, just with a shovel. So let's, I'm gonna get on with that. You don't need to see me do that. I will write all my pots for all my hyacinths, daffodils, and tulips. I decided before I started writing all the pots, I'd go through all the hyacinths so that I didn't write too many pots, make sure I had what number that I wanted. So I had ordered 100. I'm ending up with 90 because quite a few of these are looking pretty crappy. Like this is what a good hyacinth looks like here. And this is what 10 of them look like. And you can literally, they're rotten, right? That's not good. That's compost. You know, if they're so squishy that you can, well, actually I can't break that one, but just the color is so bad compared to what a good one should look like. Even if I peel it, which I can't, that I don't want to chance those 10 because I'm selling 3 in a pot, and if 2 of them are crappy and 1 of them is good, I can't sell that pot. I'd rather discard these 10. So instead of having 100 to sell, I now know I only have 90 to sell. 90 is still pretty good. It's going to give me 30 pots. So if you're wondering about making a mistake on a pot, because grease pencil on a plastic pot is pretty permanent, it will last for years on there. So what happens if you make a mistake? Well, I did. That whole time I was talking about my Helmar hyacinths, like where I was, I don't know. Helmar is the tulip, not the hyacinth. I should have known that by the fact that there was 100 bulbs, not 50. I should have known that because there was 10 bulbs that weren't very good, and that's related to tulips always, never hyacinths. All the answers were there for me to tell me I was doing it wrong, and I just chose to ignore them all. So what I had to do is just go inside, grab an SOS pad and a little container of hot water, and it really, an SOS pad takes the grease pencil off really, really easily. So that was really fast. What took longer is for the pots to then dry. But while they were drying, I was just writing on other pots, so that was just like a huge mistake. But anyway, we all make mistakes. The next thing I'm going to do is get a wheelbarrow of soil, because it's easier to wheelbarrow a wheelbarrow full of soil into my potting station than to take a dolly and dolly a garbage can in. Now I've been collecting soil as I direct compost into my beds. I'm creating soil. And all that created soil goes into garbage cans with lids on in the rainy season for times like this. However, on a dolly, I have to go uphill quite a bit to get to my bouquet making station because that's just the way our driveway works. And it's easier to actually shovel out of a garbage can and into a wheelbarrow. Wheelbarrow holds about 17 pots, 1 gallon pots of soil. A garbage can holds about 27. So I can fill up the wheelbarrow, wheel that up to my bouquet making station, and actually carry the garbage can up after, because that extra 10 pots worth of soil is light enough to just carry. I don't need that dolly for that. But because I'm doing 2 new beds in the front garden where the dahlias are, I have finished one of them, and there is soil created more than what I need for that bed. So that's the first soil that I used, because that's where the pots are going to go, and that little mound of soil is going to be in the way. So I'm starting with the wheelbarrow soil. I've already gone through quite a bit of it. And what I'm doing is on the table here, I have my plant pots, taking one out at a time. Electra split cup daffodil. I'm putting it in here just scooping some soil into it, grabbing 3 daffodil bulbs, putting them in the pot right side up, and then scooping with this yogurt container soil and filling the pot up. I'll let you know how many pots and how much time it took to do the 1 wheelbarrow. So I hope you're enjoying the video so far, and if you are, please give me a like, really appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed, please do. And if you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section below. I get back to everybody. Also, if you haven't checked out my Etsy page with my Birds and Santa hat Christmas cards, Birds and Santa hats Christmas cards. Oh, it's hard to say sometimes. The link for that is in the description box below. And below the link to my Etsy page, I will put a link to my how I do my roadside flower wagon, how I get it all set up in the beginning of the spring, as well as a link to how I set up for the farmer's market. Because clearly, if I'm selling pots roadside or at the farmer's market, you need to have a way to sell them. So those 2 links will be listed below my Etsy page link. And yeah, check them out. Those are 2 of my more popular videos, so you might find it interesting. So here they are, all done. I put just a couple empty plastic containers on the end just so they don't tip over if the dogs run by. But they're all done. Okay, let's get into the breakdown. I've got it all written down in my terrible handwriting, which is really bad. Surprising how clear I can actually write with a grease pencil on the 1 gallon pots, because my handwriting is awful. But let's go through the breakdowns. So I did everything based on 17 pots, because that's what one wheelbarrow worth of soil is. And since some of this is about moving a wheelbarrow, then that's my increment that I use. But that doesn't matter. I then divide it down by 17 to get the actual per pot labor and per pot costs. So first, I started off with writing on the pots with the grease pencil, and that worked out to 0.765 minutes a pot. So less than a minute, which makes sense because it doesn't take long to write. To grab a pot, write on it, put it aside, and grab another one. Funny enough, filling the pots, so grabbing the pot, scooping out 2-3 inches, 3 because the soil is loose, and then when you press the bulbs in it kind of compacts. So let's say approximately 3 inches worth of soil into the bottom of the pot, grabbing 3 bulbs, putting them in, filling it with soil, tamping it down with my hand, and then putting it over on the table. That took exactly the same amount of time per pot, 0.765. So then, now that I've done my 17 pots, filling them in and putting them off to the side, the wheelbarrow is more or less empty of soil. There's some soil in the bottom, but not enough to do another pot. The time it takes to then put the 1 gallon pots into the wheelbarrow, and I can't get 17, so it's 2 trips because I can get comfortably 8 in, but I can get 9 and I can get 10 in if I want, just by squishing them around. So it was 2 trips with the wheelbarrow. I put 8 or 9 in to get the 17. Then I wheelbarrowed it up my driveway and down into my front garden to the bed that was ready for the pots, laid them all out, took the wheelbarrow and wheeled it back down to the potting station. That took me 2.83 minutes. Then there was a pause in that because I wanted to time this out separately. To go to where my, and the reason I wanted to time this out separately is because if you're doing garbage cans worth of soil, you may already have them there. You may not be doing garbage cans worth of soil. You might have a whole pile of potting soil that you bought, which is a cost that I don't have ready to go. So I've taken this time as a separate time, but it's still one that you can look at or subtract off of. But for me, I have to add it in because I do it. So to take the wheelbarrow and wheel it to where I have my garbage cans of soil, which is at the very bottom of my driveway, to fill it up with soil took about 4 minutes. It took 0.2 5 minutes per pot, because it took me 4 minutes to fill up the wheelbarrow, and there's 17 pots worth of soil in the wheelbarrow, so that worked out to 0.235 minutes per pot. So that's all the labor time it took me to get the pot ready to sell. And that added up to a total of 4.595 minutes a pot. Now again, depending on what your labor costs are, that's going to make a difference. So if I tell you I'm basing it on $30 an hour, then I will take 2 minutes is equal to $1. So if I take the 4.595, it worked out to $3.26 worth of labor from start to finish. Now, the reason I've broken it down for you like this is because all my steps are not going to equal your steps, but you can see how I did it, and it worked out to $3.26 worth of labor based on $30 an hour. If you were doing the standard, what a lot of flower farmers do, $15 an hour, it would be half that. It would be $1.63. Cheap. So hardly any labor costs at all. And the important thing to remember now is that you may say, well, digging a trench and throwing in the tulips is even faster. Yeah, but what about in the spring when you have to dig up the tulips? You have to clean the tulips, you have to store the tulips, you have to make the bouquets. I'm not doing any of that. This is it. Because the pot, once it's grown and starting to bloom, goes up to the flower wagon. So this is all my labor costs in total, with the exception of taking the pot, hosing it off so that there's no dirt on it, and putting it into the flower wagon. That's it. So I think that's pretty good. And I sell them for $10. So out of the $10 pot, my complete labor costs, plus a teeny tiny bit in the spring for hosing off the pot and putting it into the flower wagon, which isn't going to add up to very much per pot, is, what did I say, $3.26. So off of a $10 pot, you're down to $6.74 profit. But you do have now material costs. So the grease pencil works out to about, well, it's less than 1 cent per pot, because the grease pencil lasts for a long time. But to give it a numerical value, I'll give it 1 cent. The pot itself, I bought quite a couple of years ago. There was a rhododendron business going out of business, and I bought 500 pots for 50 cents each. So the pots for me are only 50 cents. And by the time those 500 pots are used up, I'll have a whole lot more 1 gallon pots, because people always give me their extra pots anyway. So that's up, now we're up to 51 cents. The Helmar tulip bulbs, because for the sake of argument we're talking about tulips, they cost 37 cents each. However, of the 100 bulbs, 10 were duds. So that's a 10% loss. So that actually means that the 90 remaining bulbs cost me 41 cents. 3 of those cost me $1.23. Plus the 51 cents for the pot and the grease pencil worked out to $1.74. So the $1.74 plus the $3.26 labor for me has an absolute total cost. Did I not write that down? I did not. That was silly. Okay, so 326, 426, 460, 70, 86, 490. $4.90 is my complete cost. And let's just say it costs another 10 cents in the spring of labor to hose it off and get the pot up to the wagon, which to make it an even $5. So of a $10 a pot of tulips with 3 bulbs in it, my profit, because I've already taken into account the labor, my profit is $5. I think that is far better than selling tulip bouquets, because most people lose money on their tulip bouquets. I think selling the pots is a far better way of doing it. Now, a lot of people say, well, people who want tulips in their garden, they'll have already bought their bulbs and planted them. No, because in the fall, everybody's already starting to think of Christmas. and starting to count their pennies a bit. And come spring, they're going, oh, I wish I'd grown some tulips. And then they see the beautiful pots up at the flower wagon and they go, yeah, I want some tulips, and they'll buy the pots. The other thing is people who live in condos, they don't have a garden, but they do have a deck, and you can put the pot on the deck. So all around, it's everybody and anybody who likes tulips or daffodils or hyacinths, and for 2024 for me, will be really tempted to stop and buy a gallon pot of one of them. Even if they have tulips in the ground, just to add, because you can just place it in another spot. You can put it on your own porch. You can put it on your own deck. You can use it as a gift to a mother, sister, father, whatever. And, excuse me, if you have any that are left over, guess what? They're good to go for next year. I only buy perennializing tulips. And of course, daffodils are perennializing, and so are hyacinths. So any pot that doesn't sell just gets put aside until it's time for the next spring, when they bloom, they can then go up onto the roadside flower wagon again. And I know that the perennializing tulips do well, because that's what I was doing on my deck myself long before I started doing the flower wagon. I had orange emperor tulips in pots for 7 years straight. I never did anything with the pot. I just put it in off to the side summer until the next year, and then put it up on my deck again. So it was a great way of getting spring tulips up on my deck all the time. But because of that, when I decided to start doing the tulips in pots, I knew that I was good. I hope you enjoyed this video. See you next week. Bye.